Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast where we talk flowers, floral arranging, gardening, and more. I'm Tiffany Rutkowski, and my husband and I are the owners of Creative Designs by Tiffany, a floral and gift shop located in Dahlia, New York. To find out more and stay up to date, visit our website at cdbytiffany.wordpress.com and connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. I'm passionate about all things beautiful, mainly flowers, and teaching you how to savor all the things of it. You'll hear tips, tricks, and from some of my highly esteemed friends in the business. Today I'm joined by Dave Warner, producer of Tiffany Talk.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going well.
Not humid and nice.
I know.
And you got some flowers today.
Always flowers.
Yes.
I love this.
See, and now you're learning how to arrange them, right?
I did.
See?
This is, it was cool.
I know.
Actually.
Just wait. By the end of this, whenever it is, you'll be able to have your own flower shop, and you'll be able to start.
I have no desire whatsoever.
You keep taking all these tips and tricks, and you'll be able to buy and sell and see. So
but it is interesting. I mean, listen, there it's not just standing there and doing the technical, but it's actually paying attention to what you're saying
and not
listening.
falling asleep.
Of course, no, and then producing it afterwards, listening to it over and over. No, just kidding.
Yep. Like my husband says, I'll listen to it once, but I can't stand listening to your voice that many times.
Oh, your husband?
He'll listen to it. He does. Well, he can't, it's like when I did Diamond Dogs, you hear my voice over the whatever loudspeaker, and he's like, I hear your voice so much at home. I don't want to hear it anymore
so he
down
comes
there.
To the game with plugs in. All right, got it.
That was always the running joke. Oh no, she's up there again talking.
Yeah, here we go.
Anyway, and today we're recording from the beautiful My Little Falls studio, and today it is beautiful. It's not humid. It's not too hot. I love it. So this is the perfect day. So today we finally got to dive into arranging. So the other day, Dave came up to the store and we did some, I have to look over here. We did some arranging. I forget. You need to move that so it's over here. So I'm looking just a little behind you. So we started doing some arranging. So we did a flower bouquet, which is basically like a wedding bouquet. You'll see in the video, it's not completely streamlined into what it would be if it was a full-on wedding for time purposes and all of that. And then we did a couple of arrangements, just everyday arrangements. And honestly, most of the flowers that we used, most were local. We had a couple that weren't local in there. So they're things that you can pick up at the store and kind of do yourself or do something similar too. So it should be a fun little thing that we do. I think, right? I hope.
It was fun.
I hope. So I haven't seen it yet. So this will be interesting to see what it comes out and looks like.
Let's go ahead and play it then, all right?
Sounds good.
All right, so today we're going to be arranging, so it's a really fun podcast, and we have the video too, so you can follow along. We're going to do two different things today. The first thing we're going to do is make a bouquet, like a wedding bouquet that you typically would see. I'm first going to show you some of the flowers and show you the difference between what you'd use in a wedding bouquet traditionally with a florist compared to what you could get like outside in your wildflowers. So here's some lysianthus. Now, how close do you see these here? These are all different colors of lysianthus. These are traditionally used for, a more high-end type scale of a wedding arrangement or a regular everyday arrangement. In this bucket here, we have a little bit of everything. We have some wildflowers, there's some zinnias, some Queen Anne's lace, which is chocolate Queen Anne's lace. We have, these are carnations, believe it or not, that were locally grown. Couldn't believe she got those, but they're locally grown carnations. And then a few of the little mini zinnias. A little too small, not as high-end or scale that you're looking for a wedding bouquet. So we're going to use those in everyday arrangements, which we'll get to in a little bit. So I'm going to hand these to Jen to start using. And then we have, in this bucket, we have what's called wax flower, which is a really pretty wax flower. It opens up, but it doesn't last quite as long, as you can see. So it kind of flakes around. So sometimes I'll use it in a wedding bouquet like in the springtime. Not my first choice because you want a little bit longer lasting. And when you go to dry your bouquet, if you want to dry your bouquet, these aren't really good for drying. So I try to leave these out as much as possible unless the bride wants them in there. So we have some wax flower, again, mini carnations, a little alstroemeria, and then some aster here, which this is where we're going to come back to on this. So keep this in mind. So here's this bucket for you, Jen. Then we have... Then let's see, so many fun things. Again, more wildflowers. These are traditionally going to go into our grab and goes or our vase arrangements, everyday arrangements, some really pretty delphinium, more like a wildflower look. If you're looking for that for a bouquet, you could have that, but traditionally we'd use these in vase arrangements because all of these things need a lot of water to stay hydrated. So we'll put these down here for Jen too. She's already working on her arrangement. She's going to be over before I am. Then we get to really beautiful pieces. These are dahlias. These are what we'd call focal flowers, especially these dinner plate dahlias. If you can see my hand, and then you can see these dahlias, they're about the same size as my hand. So they're beautiful flowers. You put too many of them in there, you're thinking of bouquet in front of you, it's gonna be too big for you. So you wanna keep it, you know, a couple of these, but you really wanna have these centered. We're gonna use these in our arrangement. And then we have our roses. I'm looking around to make sure I have everything. So these are our roses. This is the white, reds. These are purple. I think we talked about purple before on the podcast. Purple bicolor. There's the edges of them are a little bit darker, almost a red. And then we also have 2 different shades of pink. So these are the pink ones that we're going to use today. We're going to stick with more a pinky white color palette, and the rest of them I'm going to send down to Jen. Here's these for you. Oh, and I almost forgot. Behind me, we're going to use these in our everyday arranging. This is Shalosa. This is a really pretty piece. We'll get to this with the everyday. These have pretty muddy stems. They're a great focal piece, filler piece, but this is mostly going to go in our everyday arrangement today. All right, so now we're going to start making a bride's bouquet. So the first thing I like to do is look at what the greens are that I'm using. So today I have a little bit of a mix of everything. This is Apple of Peru, not the longest lasting green, but beautiful in an arrangement. As you can see, it's really big. It actually comes off of a bush that's about as tall as I am when we start. But we cut these down to make it for a bouquet. So what I'll do is I'll take a few pieces out to start. This is the messiness of floristry. So behind the counter, if you came behind the counter, you would see that there is a ton of greens that are just sprawled behind here. And when we're doing it, sometimes they fall all over the place, stems go flying, you might get hit in the eye. So this is the messy part of making your stuff beautiful. So this is one of my favorite greens in season. This is called Love in a Puff, and I was just showing this to Jen yesterday. There's these little puff balls on here, and I don't know if you can see it, but maybe you might be able to. These little seeds inside this little puff ball look like little mini hearts. And so when they dry out, they become a black-brown, and they're just a nice little piece you can put on your table if you want to be creative, or you can leave it and plant them later, and then you'll have this beautiful vine when you come back to it next year. So this is something that I like to use for a filler. And, all right. So, the beauty of having a flower shop, people come in and say hi, so. All right, so this is my main green that I'm gonna be using. Then I have some other greens here too. So I wanted to show you a traditional way that we normally will do some flower arranging for bouquets. This is called the egg. Today I'm not going to be using that though. This allows you to create and make it as big as you want it to be. They come in all different sizes. This is traditional for when you're doing wedding bouquets. Like I said, today I'm just going to do a loose bouquet, which is hand-tied is the correct term. This is something that you would use if you were getting into a little bit more elaborate, which we don't really have time for today, honestly. It takes a few hours to make a bouquet like this. So when you're thinking of a florist and you think of how long it takes them to make a bouquet, it's not 10 minutes and it's spun together and it becomes this bouquet. If they're taking a lot of time and using some pieces like this that are going to make it really special, could take hours, honestly, to make it perfect the way that they want it to look. So, the best thing to do for this simple bouquet is I like to start out with threes. So if I have 3 pieces of greenery, and you strip your greens down, because nobody wants those extra little leaves tied up in the middle of where you're holding it. And when I was younger, there was my babysitter that told me if you can French braid with one hand while you're doing the 3, you're doing a really good job. I generally do it with one hand when I make my bouquets. I get my base started, and then I spin it around with one hand. So you may see me struggle a little bit with my one hand getting all of my flowers. But see, this is the behind the scenes making of arrangements. So as you can see, I have a nice little bit of greens here. And we want a little more whimsical, because I like a lot of whimsical stuff. So this is where I'm going to pull my Love in a Puff. So Love in a Puff, as you can see, kind of trails a little bit. We can fix that at the end where we want it to go. But it gives you a nice little spin on your bouquet and causes it to come out. So as you can see, it gives you a little bit more length on it as compared to being just a straight up and down bouquet. And when we do our everyday arranging, you'll see I like to keep everything. So we have extra little mason jars for all these little scraps. It's very hard for me to get rid of any flowers because I want to make sure that I'm using them the most that I can. Put them in little mason jars, put them around your house. You don't want to waste anything. And floral arranging in itself is an art. So when you're using your artistic abilities, you want to be able to use everything that's given to you. This is where it starts getting messy. Okay, so here's where we have the base of the greens in the bouquet. Doesn't really look like much of anything, kind of gets caught on everything. So we want to see it cut just a little bit lower once we get it all together. So now what I'm going to do, and different florists have different ways of doing it. You could have a focal flower as your first piece, or you could decide to start doing all of your filler flowers. I'm going to go with a couple of fillers, then a focal. So in this case, I'm going to stick with more a blush pink bouquet. These Lysianthus are beautiful. These are locally grown as well. As you can see, it's a little heavy. So when I say a little heavy, there's a lot of buds in one stem. You don't really want to use that in a bouquet because it takes away and just looks like big chunks. You want it to look a little bit more whimsical. So that's where I trim my piece off. So then it becomes maybe one stem like this. And this allows it to kind of look at everything in the bouquet without it being big chunks all over the place. And these are champagne Lysianthus. So I'm not sure how good the color is on this, but these are a little bit of an off-white, peachy kind of look. Okay, so there's my threes. I'm building my threes. So I have 1, 2, 3 if you're looking at it from here. I don't think it's quite balanced, so I'm going to add one more piece. And remember, you can always take out, add, subtract into your masterpiece. Okay, so in this case, I have 4 here. Now I think I'm going to add a dahlia. This is a very huge dahlia, and I can't just stick it on here. I mean, I guess I could, but it'd look really weird. This is where placement comes in. So now this is where your greens are going to be able to be moved around. This is where someone who would use the egg, it helps because you can use that grid. When you're hand tying it the way I'm doing it today, you kind of have to shift them around and then stick the stem in where you want it to go. And this is something too, I always work with my stems. If they don't want to twist the way I want it to twist, you can always try a different one or add. So this one, for example, is really leaning that way. I'm going to leave it, and I'm going to add another one on its other side. So if you can see that, I'm gonna come back a little bit this way. If we can see it and we start spinning it around all the way, you see there's a little bit of peach and a little bit of pink going all the way around it. Now for this bouquet, you're thinking wedding. This side has nothing to it. Sometimes they're the nosegay bouquets that are fully rounded. This one is more one that you would hold in front of you and everybody would see what's coming in front of you. So this side we don't need to worry about as much. Proper way to, Dave, our producer, is here. What's the proper way to hold a bouquet, Dave?
I have no idea.
I'm glad you have no idea what it is. So proper way to hold the bouquet is you're supposed to hold it this way right in front of you. And your hands are supposed to be just like this. Can we say our hands like this? This is how you're holding your bouquet. It becomes a very odd and awkward position because a lot of girls don't know exactly how to hold it. As a florist, you want to be able to tell your girls exactly how they're holding that bouquet and you're positioning it. Otherwise, it'll come out, and these florists, you know what I'm talking about. It'll come out and you'll go, oh no, they moved it around the way that I didn't want them to have that focal flower in the back. So that's always a good tip and trick to tell your clients. Make sure they know which way is the front. All right, so now we have our peachy kind of combo. Now we're gonna start adding a little bit more green and a little bit of white. Yeah, I think we'll go green and white. This is the fun one today. This isn't going to any specific event. You could tailor it to your events. But this one is just for fun. So we can make it as beautiful and pretty as we want. Roses are classic in wedding bouquets. Everyone thinks roses for weddings, red roses for love. So roses are generally put in every bouquet that I do. Okay. So another key too is you want to spin your stems instead of forcing them in there. So now there's a pretty tight grid. So I wanted to make sure that that dahlia is coming up in your arrangement when you see it here. And now on the other side, I'm going to need just a few more filler greens. And as you can see on the counter, big mess. I love the tips of these too. They just are really pretty. I think it's got a lot of character to it, so I'll try and add it in somewhere. Okay, so my hand, as we talked about before, is a pretty small hand. Be conscious of that too when you're building for your brides, how tall, how big they are. Taller brides, you want to make a little bit longer of one. This right here just broke, so we're going to cut this off. Smaller hands, you don't want a really thick bouquet that they're going to have to really struggle to hold when they're walking down the aisle. So that's our initial trim. We'll get into that with our arranging, how we arrange with that. So here's our basic bouquet that we just threw together here, and that took about 10 or 15 minutes. You got your couple of focal flowers, you have your accent flowers, I'm looking at it here too. You want to make sure everything's showing. This white rose we want to bring up a little bit, so you want to be able to see it. And then I'm going to add one more green, maybe. Okay, so these little accent pieces, I really like these to show. Okay, so this is my whimsical bride's arrangement to start with. So as you can see at the bottom, you're going to want to trim those stems. There's going to be a different trim than it's going to be going into the arrangements for every day, because this is going to be held at the bottom. So you want it to be a nice clean cut at the bottom. So like I said a couple seconds ago, I did an initial cut. These are also initial cuts, because you don't want to get stuck at the end that a couple pieces are too short. As you can see here, there's some greens here. You don't really want all of that in there, because it just becomes an extra thing you have to tape around. And this is that trim. So now we take our Oasis tape, which I guess this first segment is more for florists. They'll know what this is, but for anybody else listening, this is your Oasis tape. It's a little bit thicker than typical tape. That's the waterproof tape that you'll see. This is specific for stuff like this. You want to have a little bit more, I guess, stamina on it, because if you could hold this bouquet, it's probably about 5 to 10 pounds in weight when it's all said and done. How I normally do it, it rips pretty easily. Again, this one-handed thing. I try and keep it so that I have one hand and I can snip it on the other end until I'm really confident in holding it still. So this first initial tape, I still don't trust it. I go for my second one. And it's up to you if you want to have everything laid out, and you could have your pieces of tape already clipped to your counter or wherever you're working. That would be ideal if you wanted to do it that way. I've always just done it like this. I like to do it in the moment, I guess. All right, so here it's basically pretty well held together. You can see it, my hands don't really have to hold it. Now's the true test. So I clear a space on my counter. I want that to sit as much as I possibly can. Can you see this here? That it can sit on its own without me having to hold it with my hand or support it. As you can see, all of the stems are at different lengths, so I have to trim it to make it work. With the grid, it's pretty easy. Once you stick it through on the grid, most of the time they all come down at the same spot, if you use the grid right. For freestanding like this, it's a little bit trickier. So this stem here, you can see, is a little bit longer. So we're going to trim that down. This is just a pet peeve of mine, that I like to have my bouquets stand on their own. You don't have to do that, because in reality, most of the time you don't need to have them standing. This is the messy, messy, messy part. Again, it's a little bit heavier, so you have those pieces on the front that are tilting forward. Okay. They're not quite going to sit with me today, but that's okay. We're going to go close on that one. Okay, And for essence of time, I'm not going to keep doing that, so that keeps your attention too. So I would keep trimming that down. Like I said, this is a big help too, to have it so that the grid is holding it as steady as it possibly can, and eventually you want it to stand on its own. That's when you know you've made a perfectly all-around bouquet. But for now, we're going to leave it like this. So then to finish it off, like I mentioned before, these things, not really loving the way that they're coming out anymore. They kind of follow the scheme, but not as much. So that's where I clip them. When you're clipping them, you don't want this to stick out further than where the tandles are sticking out. So I try and get it as close as I possibly can to the tandles. Take a look at it, and if you're going for a symmetrical bouquet, they would want to be end to end, so that one side isn't longer than the other one. For this is a pretty, I guess, creative, we'll call it, bouquet, so it doesn't really matter if it's all the way symmetrical. It's not going to be perfectly all around. It's going to go somewhat around. This one's a little bit longer, this one's a little bit longer here. But that's your basic bouquet making. To finish it off, this is how I normally do it. Jen, would you mind handing me one of those ribbons there, right in that basket there, the pink one? Yep. So for 90% of my bouquets, unless requested, this is the kind of ribbon that I'll use. If you can see it here, it's kind of frilly on the ends of it. Not really lacy, I would say. And then do you have scissors? I forgot to grab my scissors too. And actually, I'll have you cut it. So I'll have you cut it right here. This is just creative. Up to whoever the florist is, whoever's designing it, what your preference is. I like to make them a little bit longer. Thank you. So that when it comes around my bouquet, I'm able to twist it and tie it in the back or pin it. So just like a corsage pin would be, that's how we pin our ribbons down. So I don't have a pin on me, but in general, you would hold your pin about here. And then depending on how long you wanted your tandles to be, obviously you trim it to where it's going to be. And that was your bouquet. So now we're going to start doing our everyday arranging. So we're going to leave this piece here. And we're going to slide down to where Jen is. So she has already started our everyday arranging here. And I'm going to move this out of the way. So this is the fun thing that people can do every day out in their backyard. You can grab flowers. It's not as complicated as this. The only thing you need, we're going to this one. Okay, only thing we need for it is we need a vase with some water, a little bit of food, which is already placed in here. And I even have a mason jar out here too, because a lot of people like to use those mason jars because they're just jars that you have around your house and you can use them for it. Just make sure they're clean, there's no sauce in them or whatever you had your mason jar from. So Jen has started with hers here, and we'll spin it around. So all she's doing is designing to her eye. So she's using all the things that we have here, and she's using them to make whatever she thinks looks pretty. So if you're outside and you see all these flowers out in wildflower areas, like these grasses, go ahead and clip a few, and we'll show you how to properly design in a vase. 9 out of 10 times when you see somebody putting flowers in a vase, you'll see this. And you see this because it's outside or whatever you have from your garden, and they shove it in like this. Don't do that. So the first thing you have to do is take all of this little brown spots, and I just take my fingers like this, and I just pinch it and go down so it's a clean stem. So as you can see in Jen's here already, she's already done that with all of her pieces. She's made sure there's no greens hanging out in there or any extra pieces. So then for here, as you see with these greens, you would just make sure that they're not going into the water with the rest of the flowers. So now we're gonna finish up Jen's here. So she has a couple of roses. Yours isn't done yet, right? Or is it? Okay, so you can keep going on that one. So I'm gonna pick a couple of flowers here and throw them together in my vase. And like I said at the beginning there, I don't like to waste anything. So I'm gonna be using some of my leftovers from making that bouquet. So this is where we get to be creative. Anything you see, use anything on the side of the road, stuff that looks pretty, moves around, that's what we're using. I'm going to use some grasses here too. I'll stick these behind us. Okay. Okay. So there I have my green set, very similar to the bouquet that we did before. So now we're going to start adding some flowers to it. This I would do a few extra flowers and then maybe 2 main flowers that you want in here. For this, I'll use 2 dahlias. I'm going to slide right behind you, Jen. And let's see. So this here is delphinium, really pretty. Has some extra greens on it though. So remember, we cut those greens off. Trim it down to size. And stick it in. There's really no wrong way of doing it to start with. And you may want to rearrange when you see them. I think we talked about this too at one point on the podcast, that if you get an arrangement and you want to rearrange it, you change the water, you see you want to add a couple flowers to it from outside, you can do that. Feel free to move stuff around. It's all being creative. So, I've got a few delphinium there. And on the next one I'll show you. Got a little bit of purple here. This is how we're cutting the stems. I don't think I showed you that on the last thing because they didn't have to be cut at an angle. Cutting it at an angle allows it to fill up the water, to get water a little bit better than if it's just a straight cut right through. You want to make it a nice clean cut with nice clean scissors or shears, or if you have flower cutters at home. So the principle of 3, we got 3 here. There's 4 of the delphinium and then 3 of the greens. And then we're going to go for 2 with our dahlias. I like to stagger them so they're high-lows, I call it. So if I have one that's a little bit higher, one that's a little bit lower, it kind of brings it out. And always working with those flowers. So as you can see, he's kind of moving around a little bit. Really thick stem. Move it around, see where he wants to go, add flowers to hold it up. In terms of that, if they're moving around a little bit, keep them in a grid. When you think of a grid, it's going to keep it like this and it'll keep your flowers up. So if you see that it's spinning around like this dahlia is, work with them, but also look at your stems down here and say, all right, I need to put a stem behind here to hold it up. So that's where we're going to grab. You know what? We'll use some of these. This is Shalosa. A little bit thicker of a stem, but it's going to help hold this guy in place. How's yours coming, Jen? Good. All right, so we got this guy all held in place. Now we need just a few little pieces in here to fill it out. So I'm going to see what we have over here. This is the fun part. We get to pick out what we're adding to it. Okay. I'm going to add yarrow to mine to finish it off. Is yours done? You think so? All right. So you can finish it off with a ribbon and a tag. So in our store, I send out all of my stuff with tags on it. Just kind of, I've done it since I started the store. We finish it off with a tag and a ribbon. So Jen's gonna pick out whichever one, whichever one you wanna put on it. We have a few different styles of ribbon. There's raffia ribbon that we just tie it around the edges of it. There's the similar ribbon that we use for doing the bouquet making. And then there are actual ribbons that are already tied and they're on a pick, and we put them in the front to finish it off. And oftentimes when you come into the shop too, there's grab and goes that are ready to go. You can add flowers to them if you see that you want a different color or there's one that's not in the flower arrangement that you picked out. It's very simple to add or subtract flowers. Or if someone that you know is allergic to yarrow, what I just put in, we can take the yarrow out and we can substitute it for baby's breath or another type of filler. So it's pretty easy. Generally, when you go into a florist, most florists are willing to help you with that. Some are not, so don't ask every florist to do that, but know your crowd. So, all right, so for me, I think this looks all right. There's still a little gap right here, so I'm gonna add one more flower to it. Because I'm out of all of my white dahlias, I'm gonna have to do a switch. So I'm gonna bring this one in. And if you're arranging at home, it is completely up to you how you wanna do it. You can go back and forth. You can move it around 50 times each day when you change the water. There's no right way or wrong way to arrange flowers. I can't stress that enough. So for me, I don't want that white one in there. So I just slowly twist it out so it doesn't catch all of the greens and all the other things that I have in there and get caught up and pull out my whole arrangement. And then we twist the other one right down. We bring this one over here. So sometimes this happens too. You have a piece, you don't like where it is, clip it right out at the bottom so it doesn't pull the rest of your arrangement out, and start over. I tried to do this purposely. Okay. So now the last part that I talked about, that you don't want to have all those greens in there. If you do find greens in there, the last thing you can do is pull your whole arrangement out. Take all of these greens that you feel that were touching the water, clip them off so that they have a nice clean drink that they can take in. Put it right back in there the same way you arranged it. And you're ready to go. And Jen's got her final touch on hers. So on hers we have the tag, and she's going to finish it out with her ribbon. So I can't stress enough, there's no right way or wrong way to do this. So as you can see, Jen's and mine's looks pretty different too. So it's all on your style. Again, no right way, no wrong way to do it, especially when you're arranging at home. Everything is pretty, and when you're using fresh flowers, it's just, you have it at home, do what you want with them. And you can rearrange when you get them home. Do whatever you want. So I guess this isn't really a how-to, more just for permission to do. So in this case, this ribbon's going to be held like that. I'll grab another one here. These are pre-made bows. We use a little bit of everything. A lot of times traditional florists will use bows like this with different kinds of like the satin ribbons and things. We find that this works the best for like my style and the style that Jen uses, and most often in the store we use. And then she has her finishing touches to make sure that it has a nice point on the end. All about the detail here. So beautiful. So if you like detail, we're your florist. All right, so we'll spin it around and see the front of it. So this is more of a front to back arrangement. Same thing with mine. The backs are, there's nothing really behind it. We can do centerpieces. Those are more the all over arrangements. These are the front to back ones. So, and that's it. So thanks for joining us.
Okay, so we hope you enjoyed watching the arranging. I hope it was something you learned, or it takes a little bit of time. That's one thing. I was talking to Dave how long it actually was, and you said it was about 37 minutes to do the whole thing.
Yep.
And keep in mind too, we didn't do the full completion of all of the arranging. There were some things like Jen was making things as we were going. For the flower bouquet, we were still putting things together. You would still have a couple added elements. I know at the end we were doing the teepee, so it stands on its own, and we didn't get to that point. So when you're thinking of flower arranging and actually putting time and effort into it, it does start to finish take quite a bit of time. So
The thing was, when you were doing the teepee thing, I kept
Yeah.
thinking you were going to run out of stems.
that's something.
I was like, give up.
I know.
You don't
Well,
have to make it
and
stand
that's-
up. Just stop.
I know. Well, that's my pet peeve, and I love to. That's on my thing too, and you'll see that on like Pinterest or anything. The ones that can stand alone, then you really know that they're doing what they're supposed to be. Because otherwise, in the stems, if they're not supporting themselves, they kind of tip over and stuff, like you saw in the video. So
Well,
it's
it
my
didn't really
pet
tip
peeve.
over
I
'cause
was,
you
I
kinda
know,
were holding
yeah,
it,
and
but-
that's it. Because I mean, even if you're holding it potentially in a wedding, if you're holding it, you're supporting it, but like, what if they want pictures of it and it could stand alone? That's when you got a real nice bouquet. Have you taken wedding photos that they're standing alone, or are they laying down?
I leaned it against something.
Yeah, see? So how much would a photographer love it when they stand alone?
Most of the
and-
time, the shot for me would be when they hold it and
Yeah.
you're seeing the hands
Yes,
kind
yeah.
of thing. And so
Yeah.
I can't remember ever shooting it stand alone by itself.
Mm-hmm.
Just never seemed that interesting to me.
Yeah, well, see, that's why I'm not a photographer, because I'd be like, why isn't this bouquet standing by itself? I got to get the shot with the wine glasses and the
I want to say, I
the
think you
rings.
obsessed just a
I
little
do.
bit too
I
much
do.
at that point.
Well, see, and that's the thing. Like, that's when you do weddings and things. I've talked to a couple of my friends when they do the weddings. You take a long time putting effort into it. And I have one friend that she says, like, funerals, they come in a couple days before. You only have a little bit of time to prepare. A lot of the wedding venues and people that do the wedding things, they'll have weeks that they're sketching and starting and preparing. And, the flower farmers that do weddings, they start harvesting like the week before so that they can start putting it in their cooler, getting it ready and stuff. So it is a very long process. So maybe you saw a little glimpse into it. So
I did.
you get a little bit more appreciation. So, today's Ann Moore. So we didn't have a guest today for Ann Moore. Dahlsville is a very small town. We hope you come and visit Dahlsville. So that's my plug for Dahlsville. That's where my store is located, and all those cute little shops and things that they've come in for the Ann Moores before. So this week, or this month, I guess, we don't have anybody for Ann Moore. But I was going to say real quick, as we were doing all of the arranging and, looking at how you can do it and how you can put your own spin on it. So this is my Ann Moore for this month. So use what you got. So Ann Moore, have fun. It's almost the end of the summer. I was just telling Dave, I stopped my my Facebook and Instagram for 2 weeks just so I can relax and have fun doing what I love doing, which is flower arranging. So stop by and see me in there. So with flower arranging or anything that you're talented in, take these couple weeks, the end of summer, it's beautiful outside, go outside, take a walk, go in the woods, do what you want to do. And just really enjoy everything that's around us. Stop by a ice cream shop that you don't normally stop by. It's just my little plug for the end of summer. I guess I'm getting a little reminiscent because summer's coming to an end, and I love summertime. So soon enough, the snow will fly. But so that's my Ann Moore. Go around, support the little local shops and little pop-up things. Maybe you're always going to work or have a lot going on. Stop by those things. Just take 20 minutes and do it, or go out back and cut flowers. That's what I did all weekend. I found these little weeds. I'm not even sure if they're invasives or not, but I found these little weeds that I put together with some of the flowers that I had grown, and just put them in little jars around the house and stuff, just for fun, So no pressure, nothing I had to sell, and so there's no wrong way to do it.
I was out picking weeds.
Right. Well, that's well. There's like these millet grasses, and then I had grasses in like the back of our yard, and I was like, these kind of look like millet grasses. I think they are. I had one that I texted my flower grower, and I said, what is this? It smells really pretty. And I wasn't sure what it was. It was growing in a place that I hadn't planted anything. Still don't know how the seeds came up, but it's phyllox. So do you know what phyllox is?
No.
It smells really pretty. Almost looks like a hydrangea head. So it has all those little flowers, but it smells really, really great.
Is it white?
Yeah, it's white.
Okay. All right.
And
I know what it is.
I didn't know that you had to seed it in, because I said, oh, it's growing right in front of my house, and I don't know where it came from. And she said, someone seeded it there. She goes, it doesn't just show up. So I said, hey, cool. But I had no idea that grows in my house. So cut those down, put it in a nice arrangement. So that's my and more tip for everybody today. So enjoy the beauty of today. So we hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and you can catch it the third Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. on My Little Falls Radio and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.